back to DeFi, Degens, Drip, and Farm for Poverty, where on this channel, our vision is to empower the impoverished by helping you find financial freedom through crypto assets. If you like the mission, you resonate with the vision, and you find this content useful, please subscribe and leave a comment and a thumbs up. Hey guys, welcome back to DeFi, Degens, Drip, and Farm for Poverty. So this is another deep dive into the weekly Wednesday Forex Shark ecosystem review. So we did Drip last week, but I realized that needs to be even broke down even further. So I gave you the pros and cons and kind of an overview. Now we're gonna go a little deeper into kind of why you should get into it. Not financial advice, of course, but why I'm in it, or things you should look at if you're going to get in it. And the most common one we're going to look at is the sustainability and how that relates to Drip. But first, I'm going to hydrate this on my phone here, because this is one of the reasons to get in. I don't have my Ledger wallet connected here, but I'm going to do it on my phone. But the main reason, like I mentioned before, is you get this 1% per day. So this is a little over 24 hours. So I can generate now, it'll be a little less than this, let's just say $140 a day from Drip, up to 365% max payout, or 1 year from now if I were to claim every day. And that is worth it. And that's with the price of Drip being far below what it was when I brought in, but it's worth it. So, but the question comes down to sustainability. If you're sitting on the sidelines or you just got in, you got to wonder, will this make it? And that's what this video is really going to cover. I'm going to try not to go too deep into the weeds, because this could be a really, really long video. But the main thing you have to look at is how it's set up. So we kind of talked about this before, but the main thing that makes this sustainable is the tax model. And a lot of people will say, well, that's just the Ponzi and there's no utility, and we're going to get into that. But you got to remember, taxes have been a proven sustainable model in all other financial systems. That's literally how our existing fiat system is built. It's with taxes. The only way to keep that system going without just a bunch of money being printed, which it is, but it's a tax system, meaning you pay a percentage of the money you earn back into the system so that they can pay it towards other things, keeping things going, yada, yada, yada. So the tax system in here is very, very deep. So there's the well tax, but I'm going to use this chart on this one Medium article. So there are 4 kinds of taxes in the Drip faucet. You have deposit, you got 10%. You have withdrawal, you got 10%. So that means there's an 80% tax, 20% tax if you were to get in and take your fees out, your money out, and then turn it into actual fiat currency that you can spend. So there's 20% there that you just got incurred, right? Then every time you hydrate, which I just did, there's a 5% tax. So what I had here goes into my deposits, but 5% of that goes to the claimed. So I haven't claimed this amount, but it's being quote unquote penalized against me. That's a good thing, because there's a max payout that you can get and a maximum claim. These kind of tie together. So I'm not going to go deep into that, but just want you to understand that that's where the tax system comes in. And then there's this well tax from 0.99% to 50%, depending on the percentage you withdraw from the faucet. That's this, right? So there's additional whale taxes. Once you start to get here would be 10,000 Drip. No, I can't remember actually. 10% of the Drip supply. So that's the max. Once you have claimed 100,000, or you have 100,000 in your Drip max payout, that's where you're at the 50%. So this will be 100,000, this will be 90, this will be 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. So once you get to your first 10,000 claimed Drip, basically down here towards the max payout, you're going to start seeing that tax come in. So that's the first thing that makes Drip sustainable, right? But that in and of itself would be why people say it's a scam, or there's no other utility, or it can't last, or whatever the case may be. But the major utility, this is the number one, the whole purpose of Drip is a economic vehicle or financial vehicle. It's meant to try to generate money. That is all cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin originally started out the exact same way. There was no utility for Bitcoin. One person bought pizza with it, spent 10,000 Bitcoin, now 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And that was the first utility. Before, it was just a project that had no utility. That is how all cryptocurrencies start out. Hell, a lot of products start out with zero utility. You're trying to solve, create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist yet. So Bitcoin was created to solve a problem, but nobody knew that that problem existed when Satoshi Nakamoto wrote his white paper and started farming Bitcoin. So to all the fudders and naysayers and stuff like that, it's like every single thing you create starts off as something that may not have massive adoption to provide utility. And in crypto, that's every single cryptocurrency and coin starts off that way. There is no utility for it besides people decide to use it for the network and or because they see it as a get-rich-quick scheme. So that's no different than Drip. Drip started out the same way. But what we can look at with Drip is now go deeper into the tax system to start to understand how the protocol itself is sustainable. So there's a great article, I already referenced this in a number of other videos, but this article goes in depth with the tax model. So remember all those taxes I just talked about. This shows you what would happen if basically people, continue using it and how long would it last. So when you look at the number of holders, I showed this before as well. Right now, these tokens sitting in the wallet have not been added back into the tax pool. So let's say this person were to sell a couple of these, then this would help and go back into the tax pool. They've already been taxed on pulling it out, but they haven't sold it, so they haven't gotten that additional whale tax that comes into that because they haven't sold any of it. And that is another way that Drip becomes sustainable because it tries to get people to lock up their Drip tokens, which is where the farms come in and the additional utility with the borrow and lending. But by keeping the supply of Drip low, it allows for price appreciation because of simple supply and demand economics. But this article goes into great depth on how sustainable Drip is based on just the tax system alone. So I'm not going to go in super depth, but highly recommend you read this article, Cryptozoa, the Drip Network Comprehensive Tax Sustainability Model. But he basically runs a lot of numbers and tells you how long this can last and how long it would take to drain itself if people did like this and just kept pulling the Drip out and didn't sell it. But remember, there's no point in pulling it out and not selling it. You want to generate money from it. So at the end of the day, Drip is going to always be sold back into the system or locked up in another farm where it's generating yield. Because again, the number one utility is to make money from it. That's the sole purpose that it was created for. And then eventually we've had these other systems being built on top of it. But this just goes in depth to explain how long it would take if tokens were not sold back into the tax vault. They got locked up, yada, yada, yada. But the long story short is that Drip can last an extremely long time with the existing wallets that we have, even with no new people coming into the system. With new people coming in, it just lasts even longer and can keep the game theory going further and further and further. So this is a great article to explain that Drip is extremely sustainable, and he goes in depth to explain that. So I'm not going to read through all of this, just want to highlight it so you can read it on your own. But the point is that Drip is sustainable due to the tax model and the game theory built behind it. So as I've shown before, you have a number of people buying and selling Drip. What happened to, here we go. That's the game theory, right? So game theory states that, I won't go into the details of like the game theory that they use for the DAOs, but the point is that everybody's playing their hand based on their own personal assumptions, and that's what market dictates, assumptions and emotions. And typically 80% of the market will buy the tops and sell the bottoms. And you can see from here that that's been happening quite a bit. So the game theory in and of itself allows for the capital to be transferred from the weak hands to the strong hands. And that's no different than any other financial market, stock market, any of that stuff. So crypto is no different. People who have a long-term vision or who get inside alpha on when a token's gonna pump or whatever the case may be, know when to buy low and sell high, and then everybody else is left holding the bag. Drip will be no different if you follow the herd, as you can see here. So people that got in here and then took profits and sold and sold and sold, or let's just say they didn't sell, they claimed and they kept it in their wallet. Well, that's fine. They still lost out on all of this compound interest that they could have had. So the game theory and the tax model help to make drip sustainable. But let's go a little bit deeper. So I already told you that all tokens start off as basically a Ponzi, for lack of a better word. If you're not familiar with a Ponzi scheme, it's basically where the newer people, there's no utility. The new people are used to pay the old ones. So I already told you all crypto started that way. There was no use cases for most cryptos until they built the blockchain that required to use it for gas, or until massive people started adopting it and going, yo, I'm going to hold on to this because it's worth something. But there was no initial utility being built. NFTs are the same way. Very few NFTs that are made actually have a use case. They have a roadmap where they're telling you, hey, look what we're going to do in the future. But initially, they're selling you a dream. They're selling you this Ponzi scheme because there's no utility. And the only way you make money on your NFT is if somebody comes behind you and goes, yo, I think that NFT is going to go somewhere, and they will execute on the roadmap, so I'll pay you more for it. So anyone that says otherwise is full of shit, but that's where game theory and Ponzinomics come into play, and that's how a lot of businesses get started up. Even legitimate businesses start that way. You have to create utility, create market demand. So this article is a great example of what he calls the 3 fundamental laws of the Ponzi universe. So I'm going to explain how Drip started that way, but how it exited that system. So in here he's talking about a closed system, describes a system in which it's completely isolated from its environment. So he's using the analogy of, let's say there's a set of poker players, 8 poker players sitting at a poker table. Whatever money they put into the table, it's closed, right? So whoever wins, somebody else lost in order for someone to make money. No additional money comes in, no money leaves the system. However, in the closed system, at the end of the day, eventually everyone loses. Why? Because in a closed system at a poker table, you have the fees for the house, you have the rake, you have the percentages that the house takes. So every time there's a small percentage being taken away that you sit at that table. So eventually all players lose in a closed, isolated system. That's the number one law of the Ponzi universe. So in a closed system, if you remember from physics, it will eventually move towards atrophy. That's what this is trying to say. So in an isolated system, the amount of money in an isolated system can be moved around but cannot grow more than the money that was put in. That's what the poker table analogy came in, right? Then number 2, second law of thermo-Ponzinomics. The entropy loss in an isolated system only increases with time. This is what I just explained to you. So you have trading fees, arbitrage bots, sandwich attacks lurking to siphon off value. That's in regards to the crypto side. So if you have a certain amount of people putting capital into an investment and nobody else comes in, then eventually every time you make a transaction, you have the gas fees. Every time you swap between tokens, you have the trading fees. You have people using bots, or it can be exploited or rug pulled, right? So that just means eventually everybody's going to lose. That's the second law. It's going to happen because it's a closed system. Then number 3 is the amount of money in the system starts to decrease the activity in the system. System spirals down to 0 alongside it. So with number 2, people are losing money with the trading fees, arbitrage bots, gas, all that stuff, right? Well, if you continue to lose money, what happens? Well, you're like, screw this, I'm down 10%. It's not going up. I'm going to go ahead and get out. Well, as you get out, other people start to get out. And once a Ponzi grows into billions, the amount of new entrants needed merely to sustain the system, organic loss creates a gravitational pull too large to overcome. So in this example, it says yields start to decrease. So one person starts to leave for another project. Then the price drops, which reduces further yields, and then it goes to a downward spiral. And we just saw that with UST. That wasn't a Ponzi, so to speak, but it's neither here nor there. But the point is, it was a closed system, and it was semi-closed. I wouldn't call it a closed system. But just to explain to you again that that was a $40 billion market, and it still had its issues because it could be exploited basically through arbitrage. So this is typical of, like I said, most cryptocurrencies, And yes, drip falls into this. However, it no longer fits this, and I'm going to explain that at the end of this. So that's kind of the point. I want you to see that, yes, that was how this was created, because there was no utility. It was technically a closed system, and nobody was making any money unless new people got in. And that's where we get into the utility aspect. So in order to exit the closed system, or to move out of it, or gravitate towards something greater, there's these levels this guy created of the Ponzi, he calls it. Number one is outright scam. Founders plotting a rug pull all along. Unrealistic, obfuscated plans for achieving real utility. Might fake it till you make it. Has revenue, but they are very incentivized, and not a Ponzi, right? And in this article, he compares Bitcoin and BitConnect and OneCoin as a Ponzi. Even Hex, he puts in the maybe a Ponzi. No real utility, we'll see. Axie Infinity and Sushi, and then Uniswap and Yearn Finance. So this is just his personal take, but you can kind of see how he groups these together. But here's the real point of how a Ponzi can exit the system. So he calls it the possibilities for redemption. So this is how drip comes into play, and why I'm saying it's no longer that way, and why it's sustainable. So number one, it can move towards gambling and entertainment. The prevalence of brick and mortar and online casinos is proof of a large market of people willing to exchange monetary EV for fun, speculative experience. Makes the player versus player dynamics fresh and fun enough they could become sustainable. This is exactly where the lottery scratch-offs come into play. This is where the Bet Fury casino comes into play. This is where the dog roulette comes into play. Gambling is a legitimate utility. Whether people want to believe it or not, that adds legitimate utility to a token, or any game for that matter, because new players come in with the hopes of making millions of dollars, and that can sustain itself for long periods of time, forever. I mean, hell, a damn city exists because of it, right? Multiple cities, Las Vegas, Reno, and the one in China. Can't think of that name right now. Next, community and memes, creating a sense of belonging. People are ultimately willing to pay. Content that is fun to consume increases the chances of this even further. So you can see that YouTubers such as myself try to build utility. You see that people within the community have built their own apps. There's been a miner game built for this. Ray from Bartertown Conglomerate does meme challenges and gives away drip. So he's incentivizing people to make content, to market, and then he pays them in drip. He has games. It's pay to play. He's not the only one, but just the one that popped in my head. So we also know that the community is huge for drip, right? Number 3, sorry. I want to make sure this is still working here. Number 3, charity and giving. If people believe the project is doing good for the world, they can be okay to do money for feel good, charity, or trade. You have Little Cryptita building wells. You have Drip Farm that's doing the charity waters. You have me trying to do Drip Farm for poverty. There are other ones, I think one in Brazil. So it's incentivizing people to get in with, hey, if I don't make money because I don't see the long-term value, at least I was able to donate to a charitable cause. And there's multiple people within the projects doing that. And last is the investment scheme, turning the pooled money in the Ponzi into a decentralized hedge fund, yield aggregator, VC fund. This is exactly what the DAO does. So Forex gets access to brand new projects that have proven themselves, and that he gets specific allocations for. So AcquireFi is the newest one. The people that got access to build Drip were part of the DAO group. The Rev Farm, which was the Manor Farm. So these are investment schemes. Any new project he comes up with, he goes to the DAO to raise money for it, and he's going to be building another DAO. So that's not directly Drip, but he did mention that a subpart of his existing DAO may use Drip tokens to get access to it. And then you have grouping, attention, and selling it. Time and attention are the ultimate scarce goods. Now that there are 1,000 protocols, products competing for it simultaneously, it increases possible to monetize, having captive audience or users, blah, 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 blah. So that is the YouTube content and Shillers and all this stuff marketing this, and you can see the demand for people coming into Drip content. That's why I'm making this exact video right now. So the point I'm getting at for all this all ties into sustainability. Is Drip sustainable? And the answer is the 100% yes. Anyone that says otherwise doesn't understand Ponzi-nomics and crypto and how all projects start that way, and the ones that survive find utility in one of these ways or maybe others. And Drip has tapped into literally all of these. This is not a Drip written article. This is some guy that's independent that went in depth on tokenomics and Ponzi-nomics, and Forex has this long-term vision and is checking all these boxes. Coincidence? I think not. It's because this is what's necessary for a long-term viable project to actually sustain itself. And not to mention, in this particular one, I would imagine the borrow and lending would fall into this. So as I mentioned before, you have these people sitting on lots of drip. He's going to incentivize them to hold their drip and lock it up, and then they will be able to loan out BUSD in exchange for someone else's drip in the faucet. So the faucet will pay them back on that loan, and they get to keep their initial investment or whatever it is. We don't know how it will work, but we know the end game is that Forex is trying to get people to lock up their tokens. Everything he's built is all about locking up tokens. It's all about creating short supply. This is his largest supply project. The dogs and pigs, 300,000. The B Reap and Reap is like 83,000 or something like that. He makes very small cap projects so that they can eventually shoot through the moon. It's easier to multiple X this low token price once we get the lending and borrowing than it is if he had 1 trillion tokens. So he is clearly looking into the future on how he wants this to integrate. So you have to decide if this is something you want to get into or not, but I'm just showing you how it checks all the boxes and that this does indeed prove sustainability for the long term. You are welcome to read all these articles in much more detail, but I just wanted to give you guys an overview, and I've already taken up more of the time than I should have on this, but this is for the drip utility and sustainability part of this series. So next week, I will probably go into the reservoir, which again supports drip. It's crazy. So there's so many things, but not financial advice. But if you're looking for a project that will be here for a while, I 100% speculate that this indeed will. I don't think it'll be in the exact same form. So if you wait too long, the price of drip may be too hard to get in, and he could change this to where it requires a different drip balance. Remember before you had to have a minimum of 10 drip, and now is 1. There could come a point in time where drip is so expensive and you need only 0.1 drip, or I don't know. But I do know right now that at these prices, you are getting a deal for what Forex is building by the end of this year. And the long-term vision of what this project can do. So in 1 month, we all went from 140 down to 2 months, down to 30. But in 2 months now, we've only dropped 50%. So that just shows you that people, like, yes, we've kind of found a bottom, because in 2 months we dropped like 70%, but or 80%, I would say. I didn't do the exact numbers. And now for the last 2 months, 1 month we've been trading sideways between like $15, and it took 2 months to get down that low. So these prices will not last long. We're not going to see these prices that we had back here ever again, in my opinion. Of course, with all the utility and things of that nature, dogs, pigs on the horizon. I'm sorry, dogs in the animal farm, relaunching the what do you call that thing? The lottery tickets, scratch offs, all that stuff. So anyway, sustainable, yes. Should you get in? Not financial advice, but hell yes. All right, guys, until next time, lift daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.